Hello everybody! Today I want to show you very quickly another fun use case for the workflow that I was showing you in the past few videos. So take a look at this shot and slowly I will increase glasses to the character. How cool is that, right? Freeze frames here, it's nicer to see the dissolve. So let's look at the shot. So this is from the movie I showed you before called KOTTI Express. The actress here is Yun Huang. The DOP is Kira Fung, and I am the director. This is why I can show you this film, because I have all the copyrights to do that. And also because it's a real movie. So it's a real shot from a real movie, shot with a real movie camera, the Alexa Mini at 4K, 24 FPS. And this is the log output from this camera. And we are going to work with the log, and later we are going to grade it. So everything is going to be done on my local PC, which has the NVIDIA RTX 5090, the Ryzen 9 9950X, and 128 GB of RAM. So no data centers, like in all of my videos. Everything is done locally with ComfyUI and traditional compositing together, and in 4K. So this is like a result here that I can actually deliver to a color grader to finish the movie, to screen on the big screen in the cinema. That's the purpose. Okay, so the first thing here I did like conversion lot and curve. You can see I have one lot and one curve, and the curve is here, as you can see. So that's a very simple setup for a basic color grade. Now the next step that is very important is to give handles for the clip. Because if you've seen my previous films, every time we run ComfyUI, it doesn't really match up all the frames, and sometimes it cuts the end of the shot. So, and also the beginning of the shot usually doesn't look very good. So I like to give like 10 frames at the beginning. So as you can see here, those are like 10 frames. And at the end, I also gave a 10 frames handle. So here, the middle part is actually what we are going to deliver. But we are going to work with the entire thing with the 20 frames. And now let's jump to ComfyUI and walk through the workflow. All right, so over here in ComfyUI, I showed you this before many times. We start with the project setting, the width, the height, and the frames. I wouldn't touch the width and the height because the model that we are going to run is working best at this resolution. The frames you need to plug in, or to use here the source frame count. You can also add this one. I like to add it manually because this is how I used to work, and I like to have control on everything. When we go down, the models that we are going to use is primarily 2.1 VACE. We are going to use the VAE for that, and another LoRa to speed things up. And here we have SAM2 and 2 Florence models, the large and the base. Those are for masking. But as you will see in this example, I actually don't use those models right now in this particular example because I make my own mask. The last one here is the Lazy Mix Real Amateur checkpoint, and this is for in-painting, which also actually in this workflow, I decided not to use the built-in in-painting inside the workflow. I did my own Photoshop, but let's continue step by step. So as you can see, the next step is to make a reference frame for the AI model to start animating. And here, for example, ignore the error here for a second, but I uploaded the first frame and I did a rough mask around the eyes where I need the glasses to be. Here I wrote like a simple prompt, and over here I try to run it a few times. So when I did prototyping and I tried to run it a few times like that, I got a few reference frames. This is one of them, this is another one, and here's another one. And the first one, when I run the workflow, the result is like that. The second one is like this. And the third one, the leopard print one, is like that. So I'm not really happy with any of them. A big issue that you can see is that here the glasses kind of break before the ear. So the glass is supposed to come like behind the ear, but it doesn't work. So what I decided to do is to make my own frame. So this is something I did in Photoshop, in Photopea actually. I don't use Adobe anymore. I took another frame, not the first frame, a frame that we can see the ear, and I made my own glasses, and I just did a quick Photoshop there. Now, let's jump for a second into Nuke, because as you can see, the frame is a little bit cropped, so I want to walk you through that. Okay, so over here very quickly in Nuke, I read the source footage, and then I do the crop and SD, because we don't need all the pixels around her, and we work in SD resolution. So actually we need to crop it to save some resolution for later. And then I just exported it back. Let's go back to ComfyUI. So here is my own custom reference frame that I photopeed, and this is plugged into the reference image. The next step is to write simple prompt that describe this frame with a focus on the objects that we added the glasses. So I ran this automated prompt, and then I re-edited the prompt and corrected it to this one. For example, the woman is wearing big glasses that goes behind her ear. So that's a detail that the AI was struggling with, and I forced him with prompting a little bit to focus on that. The next stage is to make a mask, and as you can see, I tried to do the automated mask using Florence 2 model here with the point cloud, like I showed you in my previous videos. It didn't work for me so well, so I decided to make my own mask, and let's look at this mask here. And I did it in Nuke, so let's jump back into Nuke. And over here in Nuke, you can see I made this rotor shape and I dilated up. As you can see, there are a lot of transform mesh movers here, and there is a tracker here. Because what I found is really important is that the mask that we do for the glasses should really track with the face, because this is going to be also a guided video later for the AI. So if the motion of the mask is different than the motion of the hair, the glass will move differently than the head, and we want them to match. So I tracked the head, and you can see like the mask is moving with the eyes or with the head in the same kind of oscillating way. So that was really important. So if you use this workflow, just like pay attention that if you use a manual mask, the manual mask is going to be used later as a guided animation for what you are going to put in the shot. So put some time into it and animate it as good as you can in the limited resources and time that you have. Okay, so we plug this here, the mask, into ComfyUI, and we change the switch here to true, because true equal external mask, which is what we did. And if I change it to false, it means it will go through the Florence 2 model, which we don't want because it failed on me on that case. And if we just run it very simply here, 1 and 2, you can see now we have a representation of the guided video that is going to be used later. As you can see, the mask is tracking the head, very good. And it covers all the areas that we want to replace with the glasses, plus a little bit extra. And here is another point to keep in mind, that you want the mask to be larger than the thing you want to replace, because I found that if the mask is very tight around the object, it's kind of giving a worse result. If the mask is a bit larger than the object that you want, for example, here the glasses, I dilated the mask to be bigger in Nuke like I showed you before, and it really gave me a better result. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so we go down, and the next step is to do some ControlNet, because we use the one VACE model. So let's just run those two very quickly to see what's happening here. Alright, so over here we can see the pose information, which is very good because it's tracking the face. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for what we are going to work with. And here the depth map is also very good because it gives us this pole here. You see? And you will see later that the AI is automatically cutting this out because now it understands that there is something in the foreground that is in front of the glasses that it's generating. Okay, so the next step here, this is the VACE cascade. And what's happening here is that the first one is getting the mask as the control video. The second one is getting the first ControlNet, which is the pose information. And the third one is taking the second ControlNet, which is the depth generator. And it combined it all together and it giving us this latent. So the way I like to imagine it in my head is what's happening is that in this stage, The AI model is constructing a map. If you think about the map of the city, where the streets are, where the buildings are, and the next step, the sampling, is going to build the city from the instructions of the map. This is why this is a very intensive process. Most of the processing is going to happen here in the sampling, because it's building all the building and the information of the city based on the map. And the map here is based on the control videos, right? On the masks that we gave and the two control nets. So this is the information to build the map, from that to build the city. And now we want to take a video inside the city or a picture inside the city. And this is what happens here in the VAE decode. And if we want to print this picture or develop it, this is the video combine, right? So this is how I like to imagine it in my head, because like a latent is like an abstract idea of something that is going to become the final image. It's like the source information, or it's like the higher dimensional information of what is going to be extrapolated later in matrix multiplication, which is above my head, and I'm not sure that I fully really understand the math there. It's a lot of linear algebra, but I found this metaphor in my head to understand what's happening is very helpful, because then I understand, okay, actually the guides that I give, the mask and the control net to build the map, and on top of that to build the city, and then take a picture inside the city, makes me understand as an artist the value of those control videos. Anyway, for me it's helpful. I hope it makes sense to you too. And then we just render it and we get the result here. And it's fine, but it's not perfect. We need to continue working on it. So let's go back to Nuke and composite that on the original footage. Okay, back here in Nuke, I read the original footage. I do some time offset because I start at frame 1001 here. I use this rotoshape, which is the same mask from before, but without the dilate, so now it's tighter around the object. I do here the reversed SD crop, because we did some crop and transform, so that's the reverse of that, so it will match. And then I do a little bit of grade and pre-multiply it. So this is what we get here. Okay, so this is what we are going to merge over the footage. And now we are adding back the noise. Because another important step that I didn't talk a lot in my previous videos is how we composite back the original noise of the camera on top of the AI footage. Because what those AI models are very good at doing without even telling them to do is to denoise. And of course we want the camera noise, so composite will be as good as possible. So we need to add it back. And what I did here is I look at the original footage. I do a denoise here, and I use the vanilla node here just to do a basic denoise. And I minus this over the original shot. So I get the noise data here, which if I bump this up a bit, you can start see the noise, right? Okay, so this is the camera noise, which is very hard to see on YouTube. Another thing that you can see here in the AI footage is that there is some artifacting, like JPEG artifacting or something. So I did a little bit of blur on that. And then I plus the noise. So if this is the noise that we get from the denoise and minusing it over the original footage, I use the same mask here to cut it. I don't know if you can see the mask around here. And then I plus it here, the merge operation with a plus, so it's minus plus. And then we get the noise, the original noise on top of the AI footage that we cut. We merge it on top of the plate. Let's zoom in. And if you can see, if I do before and after, you see here is very blurry, you don't see any noise, but here you see the noise of the Alexa, and here the noise is back, and it really makes the composite much better. One thing that you can also observe in the AI footage is that it's kind of deleting her eye, you see? So the next thing that I did here is to bring back the eye, and because we have the noise already, it's very easy, because we don't need to reapply it again. And when you add back the eye, what you lose is the reflection of the glass here. So I did a max operation here and here I do another roto shape on the pole here, on the thing in the foreground. And this is just a manual animation of a roto. It's very fast, but it's doing the job. And this is only because I discovered there are some issues with the AI footage around this area, and I decided it would be easier just to do it brute force roto. And that's it. And then I just render it, and we go back to Resolve. Yeah, so over here in Resolve, we can see the footage, and it looks okay. It looks nice. It's still in the log profile. So let's apply the quick grade that we did before. And for me, it's quite nice. I like what I'm seeing here. And here I marked the 10 frames at the beginning that we need to remove. And here are the frames at the end that we also need to remove. So it's actually only this part. And this is how we got this. See? The adding of the glasses to her. Yeah, so this is back into 4K, adding back the color grade that we did because we exported it in the log profile. And it's ready. It's 4K. It's ready for delivery. And I like what I'm seeing. And I decided to do, it's quite a difficult test, this one, because there is a glass in front of her and the glass is kind of dirty, and then she moved the head. There is something in the foreground. I wouldn't say it's better if a very talented 2D or 3D artist were to work on that. But in total, this took me just a few hours to do, maybe 2-3 hours to do. So if in the previous video I showed you a case study where the AI was actually not the right decision to work on a solution, to do the cleanup of the guy, here is actually worthwhile. Here is an example of where AI can really shine in your workflows, is to add something like that to the shot that would be very, very difficult to do in traditional VFX. Because if I'm thinking about it, okay, let's imagine I don't have ComfyUI. Let's imagine it's like 3 years in the past. How do you do that? How do you add those glasses to the characters? So you need to track the face, you need to track the camera, you need to put it like in 3D, you need to do a 3D model, you need to render that, you need to project the textures on it to get the refraction from the glasses, and then you need to composite it back. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work, and if you don't have a talented team, or if you yourself don't feel comfortable in all those like 3D software, and it can take you quite a lot of time. And okay, yeah, of course, if it's a Hollywood production and you have a team and you have the budget, of course, do it with your artist, you will get a better result. But if you're like an indie filmmaker like myself, and you want to do something like that, AI is actually a better solution for you, in my opinion. So I think one of the skills that we need to start having now is to detect when we see a shot or when we try to solve a problem, to understand if we go the AI route or if we don't go the AI route. So in the previous video, I decided the AI route was no, the traditional compositing was a better workflow. So here it's better to go with AI. So I hope you found this video interesting. I tried to keep it a little bit shorter than usual. And if you want to play around with this workflow, you can find a link down below to download it. And if you do, please write me a comment and tell me what you think about it. Did it work for you in your case study or didn't? And where do you find it shines for you and where do you find it fails for you? As you can see, some parts of the workflow failed for me, like the mask and the in-painting, and I decided to do it manually in Photopea and do the mask in Nuke. So maybe some parts of the workflow will not be working for you, but don't give up on that. Try to combine it with the traditional compositing toolset that we have. Okay, that's it for me for today, and I hope you have a nice day. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.